The hell is that? Scott Holladay? Scott Holladay? Combat Fights Unlimited spelled my Twitter handle wrong. Or my X handle, whatever you want to call it. You know what? I'm not promoting CFU anymore. Nope. You guys are out. I will not promote that you can watch Blade vs. Slamovich 2 right now on the CFU YouTube channel. No. I'm not going to talk about how it's a great show that you can watch for free right now. I'm not going to do that. So don't head on over to CFU's YouTube channel and watch that right now. Instead, stay right here and let's plug in. This very Saturday at 4 o'clock, that is November 11th in beautiful Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at Helium Comedy Club. It is post-game comedy. I'm going to be there and I'll be getting on stage. This is not my normal type of plug, but this is kind of a big deal. So you're getting it here. Come see post-game comedy with me at Helium Comedy Club on the 11th at 4 p.m. Tickets are on sale right now at philadelphia.heliumcomedy.com. Saturday, November 19th, it is CZW Live at the Battleship. It is a wrestling show actually on board the Battleship, New Jersey. So join us at 100 Clinton Street in Camden, New Jersey. There you will see CMD finally get their rematch for the CZW Tag Team Championships against Milk Chocolate. Can the most succulent tag team in all of wrestling hold on to their tag team gold, or will CMD use the home turf advantage at turf? Can we say turf if it's actually on a ship? Because it's on the water. Turf is not a correct. It's fine. Will they regain their tag team championship? Also, we will see Jordan Oliver take on Brando Lee in the rubber match, but this time it is knockout or submission only. Who will reign supreme on board the Battleship? We'll find out November 19th at 4 p.m. Get your tickets now at czwrestling.com. Today on the Soapbox, I want to talk about war. Right now, we are over 4 years in to the war for wrestling between the WWE and AEW. Now, we've seen the Wednesday Night Wars back when NXT was taking on Dynamite one-on-one on Wednesdays, and now everyone seems to have spread out through the weeks, but there is still some friendly competition, and I want to take some time right now to talk about 5 strategies that I've noticed that the WWE uses to battle AEW. Why are we talking about the WWE? Well, it's because of Vince McMahon. You see, very recently it came out that Vince McMahon's status within the WWE may be a bit more flexible than we originally thought. When the WWE merged with UFC to form TKO, we kind of thought that this was a power move by Vince McMahon to kind of ensure his spot in creative. And we found out recently that actually Triple H will be taking the reins and running creative. We know that because you don't see Omos on TV as much. That's like the barometer. The more you see Omos, the more Vince is in charge. That's kind of the role of Omos, is to let you know if Vince is in power currently. And with Vince kind of being pushed back and Triple H taking over, I think some of these strategies might get shifted and changed. These were definitely the Vince strategies when it came to going to war against AEW. So I thought since some of these might be coming to an end very soon, now would be the time to talk about the 5 things WWE does to war against AEW. Number 1, don't talk about it. AEW is easily the number 2 threat in the world of professional wrestling. And WWE is easily number 1. And when you're number 2, you can kind of assume that your fan base is aware of the WWE. So, very often, AEW makes references to WWE television. Most of this is segregated off to BTE. BTE, being the elite on YouTube, usually makes a crack at whatever big WWE news story is going on. They made cracks about the fact that people were no longer allowed to slap the leg when throwing super kicks. They made fun of the red filter they used on the Fiend Hell in the Cell match. They like to poke fun because, as wrestling fans and as the #2 wrestling group, they know that their fan base is aware of this. So they're all in on the joke together. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't also do it on their television product. One of the biggest things that I remember is they did a tournament of world champions, and they actually counted the reigns as WWE World Championships as being a world champion. That depended on your seeding and things like that. They actually used their records and their history in the AEW story. And I personally dig that. It makes it feel more like MMA. You know, when you have someone come into the UFC, they will have your UFC record, but also your professional fight record. So if you had some matches over in Pride or Strikeforce or any of the other mixed martial arts companies that are considered professional companies, it's still considered in your win-loss record. It's not UFC win-losses, but it's understood that this was a professional fight that you won or lost. So the idea that WWE is still professional wrestling and you should take into account those records, I think is a good thing. It makes it feel more like a real connected world. However, over in World Wrestling Entertainment, they don't talk about AEW. Maybe once or twice they'll throw out a line or two. I know that they've mentioned to The Miz that his name is being used on other networks to get a reaction. But for the most part, they're pretty hush-hush about it. Jade Cargill has just walked into the WWE, and they mentioned that she has been a star elsewhere. And that's all really they need to say. Cody Rhodes, they kind of pick on every once in a while and say you were at the other place, but they never really mention what it is, because the WWE doesn't need to. Basically, when you're #1, when you bring up the #2 company, all you're doing is giving life to the #2 company. You're winning. You're in the lead. You don't want people to look behind them at the #2 company. So just don't mention it. When you're the #2 company, you can kind of assume people are aware of #1. #2, controlled signings. So the WWE did something that everyone was kind of pointing a finger at as being maybe not a bad idea, but at least a scummy idea. And that's right before AEW debuted. They went on this signing spree where they signed everyone. And everyone kind of took it as the roster of the independent being swooped up and captured by the WWE so that AEW couldn't get their hands on them. Now, 4 years later, it looks like the WWE actually was doing something a little bit different. They weren't just trying to stop them from getting independent stars. They were kind of flooding the market so that when they did eventually release these stars that they had no plans for, they all kind of had a WWE smell to them. You know, they had the stink of the WWE on them. The WWE marked them so that when they went to AEW, it wasn't like, oh, look who's here. It's, hey, look, a WWE guy is here. Throughout the 4 years of AEW, there have been so many WWE signings. And of course there has been. The WWE has been around for decades. If you're in professional wrestling, chances are you've made your way through the WWE. And I'm not saying that AEW shouldn't sign WWE guys. If you have a chance to sign the Hardy Boys or Edge and Christian or CM Punk, Chris Jericho, Jon Moxley, Sting, of course you do it. And even if it's not someone of a legendary status, someone like a Miro or an Andrade, Buddy Murphy, Malachi Black, of course pick those guys up. But since picking them up, has their star really risen? Sure, you can say House of Black won the trios titles, but you had Miro and Andrade, who were former US champions, yet to really pick up any major momentum here in AEW. Miro had some time as the TNT champion, but has since kind of vanished, and Andrade spent a lot of time out of television. So it almost seems like those pickups weren't valuable to AEW, at least not as valuable as you thought when they made their debut. I think the perfect example is Ruby Soho. I'm a huge fan of Ruby Soho. But in the WWE at her peak, she was the leader of a 3-woman stable. And at the peak in AEW, she was not the leader in a 3-woman stable. AEW's kind of picked up these WWE stars and hasn't really unlocked anything super special in them like we thought they were going to do. This is compounded by all the even smaller guys that they grabbed and have done almost nothing with them. Granted, small asterisks here, I don't watch a lot of ROH, so they might be doing more than I expected, but I'm talking about people like Harlan, Jake Atlas, Caesar Bononi, Sean Spears, in a way, was kind of in that category. Anthony Green, Santana Garrett. Those are two that I think would have been signed by AEW just because they're both like very good wrestlers. I'm fans of both of those. But instead of it being an independent signing, it was an ex-WWE signing. And all it does is make the WWE look correct for getting rid of them. They were not strong enough of superstars to be in the WWE. And now that they're wrestlers in AEW, we're still not seeing anything really get unlocked. Now, there are, of course, exceptions. I think what they did with Brody Lee is, of course, really elevating for what he had. Ty Conte or Ty Mello is awesome in AEW. We never got to see any of that stuff in WWE. I'm simply saying that for the most part, all the WWE signings, not the legends, but the smaller guys, they haven't really broken through in AEW. And it also makes AEW look like a place that if you've been in WWE, you can walk into AEW. We, of course, have a spot for you there. Now let's look at the other side. How many AEW signings has there really been in the WWE? Well, you got Cody, but let's be real, Cody is a WWE guy. You got Brian Pillman Jr., but he's kind of being displayed and presented as the son of WWE guy Brian Pillman rather than an AEW defection. The only real one is Jade Cargill, and Jade is being portrayed as being a big deal. Someone that was in another company and has proven herself worthy to be in the number one company, that is the WWE. With the way that they have worked their signings, the WWE has pulled a very effective magic trick. It has made it look like if you get cast out of the WWE, you are of course good enough to be in AEW because you were in the WWE. That must mean that you're great, even if in AEW you still don't make a lot of waves. But the other way, getting from AEW to the WWE, well, that's only for the ones who are truly elite. And of course, I'm not saying that this is true. I'm simply saying that this is the narrative and strategy of the WWE. Number 3, the WWE Tag Team Division rules. Hey, you're still here. That was a really controversial statement. I kind of thought you'd click out. I am, of course, not saying that the WWE has a stronger tag division than AEW. The WWE, I believe, is very aware that it cannot compete with the tag division over in AEW. You got people like the Young Bucks, FTR, The Dark Order, Private Party. I love Private Party and I really miss them. The Acclaimed, all these fantastic tag teams that WWE just can't really compete with what they have. But you know what they can do? Discredit AEW. One of the biggest criticisms of AEW that I hear, especially from old-timer fans, is they don't respect tag team rules. They don't respect the 5 count. They don't respect all of the nuances of tag team wrestling. And thus, WWE is going the other way. Brian Alvarez a couple months ago was going off on the absolute ridiculous notion that when a referee pulled the illegal man out of a match, he said to him, "That's your one save." Because in tag team matches, you're allowed to break up a pinfall or a submission to save the matchup. Once. If you do it more than once, you're supposed to be disqualified. There's also a lot of other rules, like you can only be in the ring for 5 seconds after making a tag. You must hold on to the tag rope. For it to be a legal tag, you have to have your foot firmly on the mat. You can't be standing on the ropes and reaching out. Those are rules in the tag team division. And by having the WWE really enforce these rules, they can enforce this is what tag team wrestling is supposed to look like. So while us fans might be watching AEW and thinking, oh, these matches are incredible, a fan that has been trained by the WWE might look at this and say, yeah, I mean, there's some cool stuff in it, but they're breaking all the rules. This isn't tag team wrestling. A good metaphor would be if you take your friend who is a huge NFL fan, to an arena football game. Sure, it says football in the title, but while you're there, you're going to see a lot of things you won't see in the NFL. You can throw into the nets that stop the ball from flying away when you kick a field goal, and it didn't bounce around, and you can still catch it. That's something you can do in arena football, because arena football is different football. But it's not the number one football. That's the NFL. And anything that's different from the number one, you can say is fun and exciting, but to the hardcore NFL fan, is wrong. So by taking tag team wrestling and having the WWE, the number one force in sports entertainment, tell you these are the rules, anything outside of this is incorrect, they are undermining the tag team division in AEW. Number 4, flood the market. So one of the advantages of being number one is to a majority of the fans, and it is the majority because they're number one, you are the priority. So you want to watch wrestling. Well, you got Raw to watch. Did you watch Raw? You did. You watched 3 hours of Raw. Okay. Well, how about some SmackDown for you? That's another 2 hours. All right, so you've watched 5 hours of wrestling. You want some more? How about some NXT? All right, you're up to 7 hours of wrestling in a single week now. All right, well, there's NXT Level Up. Have you seen that? No? All right, you can watch that. You're now up to 8 hours of wrestling in a single week. Pretty cool. All right. Have you seen The Bump? Yeah, it's like a news show that's got some wrestling stuff about all the things you just watched. I mean, you're clearly invested. All right, you're going to watch that? Okay, you're now watching 9 hours of wrestling in a single week. And that's just if there's no pay-per-view. And if that's not enough, well, you probably have Peacock or the WWE Network, right? Well, there's a whole library of stuff that you can watch there. And if you don't have that, well, A&E's pumping out shows about lost treasures and biographies of WWE stars. Have you seen those? Oh, and also check out our YouTube channel. We're just throwing stuff up there every single day. Matches that you haven't seen in a long time, and also like some behind the scenes stuff, and just your favorite superstars doing like fun, silly things. Oh, and while you're there, why don't you subscribe to Up, Up, Down, Down? Yeah, they're putting out videos every day. It's your favorite wrestlers playing video games. If you watched all of the content WWE put out in a week, you're probably looking at somewhere close to 15 to 20 hours, depending if there's a pay-per-view or premium live event available for you to watch. WWE wants you to always have a WWE show you could be watching instead of watching Dynamite, Collision, Rampage, BTE, any of those things. By always having the alternative be there, it is, or not even the alternative, the primary be there, it's giving you less time to watch any alternatives. So the way that you can suppress the enemy is simply by flooding the market with all of your content. I mean, we're at the point where wrestling is on almost every day. Like, you got Monday Night Raw, and then you got NXT, and then you have Dynamite on Wednesday, and then on Thursday there's Impact or TNA. You could choose to do that, and then you got SmackDown and Rampage on Friday, and then you have Collision on Saturday, and now Sunday, that's like your pay-per-view day. Like, there's so much wrestling to watch, and if you want to watch something other than wrestling, well, you've already committed so much time to the WWE. Are you sure you want to spend time on AEW? And at this point also, they've flooded the market so much that there's not a lot of good days left. I think it's very foolish that they decided to put Collision on Saturday nights. Because I feel like what they're really doing is making it so they can no longer run pay-per-views that night. I prefer a Saturday pay-per-view. I like being off the day after a pay-per-view. But you can't do that anymore. You have a network show that runs weekly on Saturday. Your pay-per-view's got to be on Sunday. And if I'm already watching a pay-per-view on Sunday, do I really want to spend both days of my weekend watching wrestling? Man, it's a shame that WWE gobbled up so much time so that AEW was forced to add their third show on Saturdays. That is because WWE floods the market. Number 5, the Nintendofication of pro wrestling. So what do I mean by that? I want you to think of your grandparents, and you're hanging out maybe with a friend or a cousin, and you're playing some PlayStation. You're playing some Call of Duty or some Gears of War or something like that, and your grandmom comes in and says, you kids still using the Nintendo? No, grandmom, I'm not using the Nintendo. I'm playing a PlayStation. But to grandmom, video games are Nintendo. That is what the WWE has done to pro wrestling. And take it from me, I've been to parties where I've met new people, and I'll throw in a fun fact about myself and say, hey, I work in pro wrestling. And 99% of the time, when I say that out loud, the response is, do you mean real wrestling? Or do you mean WWE? Because the word pro wrestling has been overtaken by the WWE. In the normal lexicon, when we're talking about pro wrestling, people think World Wrestling Entertainment. They think WWE, to the point that it has replaced that word. So now, in order to explain AEW to someone who's not a wrestling fan, you kind of have to use the word WWE in order to express what AEW even is. I know we've made fun of the WWE for not wanting to use the word wrestling and the word wrestler and using things like entertainment and superstar. But I can really see the effect of that now. And clearly, they have Nintendofied that word. So those were my 5 strategies I've noticed that the WWE has been using to win the war. I'm going to clarify this for all those people who wrote mean comments already, that I'm saying that these are the WWE strategies. We, as the hardcore base of wrestling, can kind of see through this, and they're not trying to aim at us, though. If we're the AEW people, there's less of us that only watch AEW and don't watch the WWE. What they're aiming at is the fan of both and the fan of them and keeping them away from those dirty all elite people. So what do you think? Do you think there are more strategies, or do you think I'm completely off the mark, remembering what I just said about this not being an insult towards you? Please let me know in the comments down below, and I hope you have a great day.